Amazing receptionist greets deaf visitor in sign language. Discovered a Millionaire'S hidden HART. Sarah stood at her desk, the hum of the law firm's activities swirling around her like a chaotic symphony. As the receptionist, she was the face of the firm, and each morning she adorned that face with a smile, no matter how her own heart felt. The weight of her financial struggles pressed down on her, a constant reminder as bills piled high on her kitchen table. Today felt particularly heavy, as if the fluorescent lights above her were dimming her spirit. She pushed through, whispering affirmations to herself. Just one more day. Just keep smiling. The bell above the door announced a visitor, and she looked up to see Mr. Delaney, tall, solemn, dressed impeccably in a tailored suit. But his eyes betrayed a deep-seated loneliness. For a moment, time stilled. Her instincts kicked in. The sound of voices faded as she approached him with a soft smile and a wave. "Hello. Welcome," she signed, her fingers dancing through the air with practiced ease. He responded with a slight nod, his gaze piercing but distant. Sarah felt something stir within her, a mix of curiosity and compassion. She assisted him with the paperwork he needed, noting the shrewdness in his demeanor and the way he meticulously reviewed each line. What trapped him? What story lurked behind his guarded exterior? As they talked, tidbits of Mr. Delaney's life emerged. He spoke of investments and business ventures, but the light in his eyes flickered when he mentioned his family. It was like opening a window only to see a storm. She learned of his immense wealth, an inheritance soaked in tragedy, a family lost in a car accident, lives extinguished in an instant. This revelation sent shivers coursing through her. Here was a man possessing everything, yet stripped of what mattered most: connections, warmth, laughter. Their interactions became a comforting ritual, anchoring them both in an unpredictable world. But as days turned to weeks, the heart of her moral dilemma began to unfold. The whispers of the firm grew louder, gossip laced with contempt for Mr. Delaney's reclusiveness. He was labeled a target, a perfect victim to be exploited. That gnawing feeling inside her tightened. She found herself at a crossroads. She cared for him. Should she protect her job or stand up for what was right? Before she could find clarity, doubt seeped deeper. The law firm's vulnerable underside revealed itself. She stumbled upon an email chain that outlined manipulative tactics aimed to prey on Mr. Delaney's trust. The walls of her world pressed closer, smothering in anxiety. She had begun to see him as more than just a client, and for the first time in years, she questioned where her own values stood. Beat down by the reality of her situation, Sarah's mind raced, wrestling with the fear of losing her livelihood versus the desire to fight back against the injustice brewing just beneath the surface. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The pressure grew unbearably intense. Just as Sarah resolved to confront the injustice head-on, a letter slipped through her fingers, one that lay crumpled on her desk like remnants of shattered hope. It was a cryptic note, signed by Mr. Delaney's family, suggesting a legacy entwined with secrets and betrayal. Her heart sank as the weight of the mystery wrapped around her, more compelling than the struggles of her own life. All she could think was that the past was reaching out, and she stood on the brink of discovering something that could change everything. Would she embrace the challenge, or let fear dictate her next moves? The tapestry of her life twisted with possibility, leaving a haunting question lingering in the air. How far was she willing to go to uncover the truth? Sarah's heart raced as she stared at the crumpled note, its cryptic message echoing in her mind. The words seemed to taunt her with promises of dark secrets intertwined with Mr. Delaney's legacy. Who was she to unravel the threads of a past so layered with grief and betrayal? Her pulse quickened with each flutter of doubt, but beneath the anxiety simmered a spark of determination. This was her moment, the stirring of a deeper purpose within her professional life. Days passed, and the firm's atmosphere felt more stifling than ever. Whispers grew louder, squawking like birds of prey circling overhead as if sensing the vulnerability in Mr. Delaney. Their malevolence suffocated Sarah. It was no longer just business, it had transformed into a moral battleground. Each morning, as she greeted him, their interactions deepened, shifting from polite exchanges to the sharing of secrets veiled in stealth. His reserved demeanor began to crack, revealing fragments of buried emotions. Her compassion for him burgeoned, layering on the weight of her moral choices. That evening, Sarah arrived home, fed up with the ache clawing at her conscience. Bills cluttered her table like ominous shadows. She spread the note before her and contemplated its implications. What if she could confront Mr. Delaney with the truth? Would it bring him comfort, or would she deepen the wounds that already ran too deep? Driven by a renewed sense of purpose, she knew she had to act. The next day, she prepared herself for the conversation with Mr. Delaney as if she were suiting up for battle. In the mirror, she practiced the words in sign language, simple, yet impactful phrases that would convey her intentions and the weight of the truth she carried. Faced with her reflection, she sought something beyond the surface: courage. Would she dare to breach the walls he erected around his heart? When Mr. Delaney entered the firm that morning, he appeared more burdened than usual. A storm brewed in his eyes, compelling her to make her move. Sarah approached him, her palms slightly trembling, and signed softly, "Can we talk privately?" His expression shifted from confusion to curiosity, a flicker of warmth igniting as he nodded. They slipped into an empty conference room, and she inhaled deeply, feeling the heaviness of the air closing in around them. "Mr. Delaney," she began, her fingers carefully crafting each sign, "I found something. A letter from your family." He paled, his breath hitching as she continued. "It mentions secrets. I want you to know you're not alone in this." For the first time, vulnerability shone through his stoic facade. "You can't understand." "Try me," she challenged gently, her resolve shining through the cracks of her uncertainty. In that moment, all of her preconceived notions of personal sacrifices collided with the storm of emotions swirling between them. She was more than a receptionist, she was a voice, his voice that he hesitated, a conflict raging behind his eyes. The mental fallout from his past battled against the rising hope Sarah had inadvertently instilled. Would he open up, allowing her to peel back the layers of betrayal that surrounded his family legacy? As silence enveloped them, Sarah felt the weight of anticipation. This was not just about saving Mr. Delaney, it was about finding herself in the chaos, becoming the architect of her own moral stand. But as she navigated the delicate edges of their conversation, she couldn't shake the feeling that unveiling the truth might plunge her deeper into a perilous game of trust, a game destined to intertwine their fates in unforeseen ways. With each heartbeat, the stakes seemed to rise, leaving one pressing question hanging in the air: would stepping into this unknown territory lead to liberation, or would it seal her fate within the confines of her own fears? The moment hung like a blade over their heads, the silence thickening until Sarah felt she might suffocate under its weight. She sensed Mr. Delaney's internal struggle, his mind battled with faith and skepticism, the remnants of his past colliding with the vulnerability she had just exposed. Yet, her presence defied the suffocating air in the room, it beckoned him to trust, igniting a sliver of hope amid his tumultuous thoughts. "Why?" he murmured, his voice tinged with disbelief. "Why would you offer this to me?" "Because everyone needs support, even you," she signed decisively. Each movement, each gesture, resonated with conviction. Perhaps it was this unanticipated connection, this bridge formed by courage and openness, that would foster a change, a decision to confront the shadows of legacy. He hesitated, his defenses quaking beneath her sincerity. But rather than forging a path directly into his past, he remained at the precipice, a man caught between old secrets and new alliances. The realization sank in for Sarah: to reach him, she needed to reflect as much on her own journey as on his. Days turned into weeks as they formed a fragile partnership, sharing snippets of their lives while continuing to navigate an office rife with judgment. Each time Sarah signed to him, unearthing more layers of his mistrust, she discovered more about the hidden depths within herself. She had never envisioned herself as a confidant. How could a receptionist carry that kind of weight? Yet, the sheer fragility of Mr. Delaney's trust ignited a flame inside her, transforming uncertainty into a newfound purpose. Their clandestine meetings molded their relationship. He began to share pieces of his history, recounting moments of joy overshadowed by regret. In those exchanges, Sarah found herself not merely acting as a listener but as an emotional barometer guiding him through the tempest he refused to confront alone. There was an unspoken pact forming, each shared secret on his part chipped away at her hesitance, and each nod of understanding from her fortified his resolve. Yet, within this build-up of trust, shadows loomed. Office gossip became a storm, and whispers of betrayal twisted around Sarah's determination. Was this alliance tainted? Her colleagues began casting sideways glances, eyes laden with judgment and suspicion. As clandestine meetings turned to public concern, Sarah started to question her own professional integrity. The whispers morphed into questions of her ambition, claiming she should remain in the background. Battle lines emerged not only between her and her office mates but within herself as well. Should a receptionist involve herself in the crusade of another, especially when the stakes felt so high? This conflict sparked a fire of introspection. In the solitude of her apartment, Sarah revisited the draft of a professional development proposal resting nervously on her laptop. She had initially crafted it to advocate for the expansion of services that catered to clients with disabilities, a nod to her own heritage as the daughter of a deaf parent. But this time, fueled by her burgeoning relationship with Mr. Delaney, she reviewed her work with a new gaze. How could she shape her environment to advocate for her values, to foster trust? But her commitment came at a cost. The acceleration of her moral journey placed her in an unyielding conflict against the expectations of her colleagues and the very walls built around Mr. Delaney. Did she dare challenge the existing structures? With each page of her proposal rewritten, she felt an alignment of purpose emerge. Yet, the fear of approaching her superiors weighed heavily. What if they rejected her? As the dawn broke over her city, illuminating the paths of doubt strewn before her, Sarah made a choice. It was time to map her future not just for herself, but as an agent of change, binding her ambitions with the ramifications of her choices. Would the unfolding path she embraced empower her to transcend the roles others had plotted for her? Determined, she stood before the mirror, ready to step into the day that awaited her. Would this endeavor bring her the growth she craved, or would it prove to be her undoing? The answer hovered like a specter, whispering tantalizingly just out of reach. In that moment of clarity, she understood that in order to fully inhabit her role in Mr. Delaney's life, and indeed her own, she would have to take the plunge into the unknown, a plunge that promised danger and growth intertwined. With every fiber of her being ignited, she vowed to confront the oppressors of her voice. After all, the true power of having one's voice heard often lay hidden just beneath the chaos of doubt. As Sarah stepped out into the day, one thought consumed her: the time had come to face the odds stacked against her, the whispers in the office, and perhaps even her own deepest fears. Would she seize the opportunity to rewrite her narrative, or would she allow others' perceptions to dictate her path? That question echoed behind her as she promised herself to confront Mr. Delaney again and all the complexities his truth would reveal. The following morning, Sarah stood in front of her laptop, fingers poised above the keys, yet paralyzed by the weight of her thoughts. Her proposal felt both daunting and liberating. Each word she typed seemed to resonate with her purpose, urging her to break through the cavern of her fear. Today, she would not only defend her ideas but also assert her identity not just as a receptionist, but as a competent advocate pushing against a tide of condescension. With each line, the narrative transformed from a bureaucratic necessity into a heartfelt mission. She wove personal anecdotes into the fabric of her argument, stories of her childhood spent deciphering gestures, the moments she spent empowering her deaf parent, her understanding of the silence that often enveloped those living with disabilities. This wasn't just a proposal, it was a testament to her life's work and an embodiment of her growth, but the anxious thrum of doubt resided like a dark cloud above her. What if her colleagues dismissed her? What if Mr. Delaney's whispers of the past echoed in her own mind, stifling her voice before it even had a chance to be heard? Her determination wavered as she considered the hours that melded into weeks, working in the shadow of her ambitions while attempting to raise someone else's beneath the scrutiny of watchful eyes. Stepping back from the screen, Sarah took a deep breath, her heart thrumming in tandem with her resolve. The act of crafting the proposal had given her clarity, but now it was crucial to prepare for the defense. She envisioned walking into her superior's office, the sterile walls closing in around her. Thoughtfully, she began scripting potential answers to the questions she anticipated would arise. Why you? What makes your perspective valuable, and perhaps the most troubling of all, are you sure you want to mix personal with professional? Her reflection in the monitor revealed a woman wrestling with ambition and uncertainty. The air crackled with tension as if her very presence could ignite controversy. For too long, she had allowed the expectation of others to shape her experience. Today was different. She had decided to confront office politics and commit to her convictions. At that moment of revelation, a loud knock echoed against her office door, startling her. Sarah turned just in time to see Mr. Delaney entering, a hesitant smile sliding across his face. The vulnerability she had come to recognize etched itself into his features this time. However, she could detect a subtle shift. It was as if he had resolved to breach the chasm that had long kept him chained to his past. "Can we talk?" he asked, his voice brimming with an earnestness that swept away her fears momentarily. Sarah nodded, motioning for him to take a seat. As he sat down, she could almost feel the energy shift, feeding off his tentative courage. The dialogue that followed was laced with sincerity and a shared understanding, veering between the raw and the uncomfortable. He shared insights about his past missteps, the shackles of legacy that had long bound him. But there was a spark of hope within him now, ignited by the small band of trust they'd begun to weave. For the first time, she saw him not just as a client, but as a fellow traveler, navigating pain and trauma. It brought her unexpected comfort, a revelation that they were both grappling with the shadows of expectations and the need to carve their own identities. As their conversation deepened, she felt the weight of her proposal unfurl within her, its message urging to break free. She could use this moment, not just to support him, but to embrace her ambitions that had burgeoned quietly within her, all fueled by the daring connection they had nurtured. After their discussion, Sarah's heart raced as she stood at the precipice of two futures, one where she returned to the quiet shadows of her office existence and another where she seized the opportunity to voice her convictions boldly. Would embracing her proposal be the ignition she needed for her professional ascent, or would it risk everything she had built? As the office clock ticked loudly in the background, her thoughts turned back to her proposal, the embodiment of her journey, her voice. She needed to challenge the perception that had confined her for too long. The fire inside urged her forward, but a sudden pang of fear followed. What if this was all too much too soon? As if to summon a sign, she glanced at Mr. Delaney, who sat quietly processing the weight of their conversation. Their alliance loomed before her, tense yet full of potential. With a deep breath, Sarah promised herself that the time for hesitation had passed. She had taken the first steps, and now she needed to take the plunge that would either solidify her path or force her to recalibrate her approach. It was time to embrace her intentions wholly, to manifest her voices into tangible actions, and perhaps, just perhaps, bring Mr. Delaney along on this journey. But as she caught the glint of uncertainty in his gaze, a different question loomed larger in her mind. Would they forge a path that rose above the judgments cast upon them, or would their alliances crumble under the weight of office politics? The moment of truth hesitated, just like Sarah. An unsettling stillness enveloped Sarah as she resumed her work, thoughts spiraling around her possible futures. The office felt both suffocating and liberating, a contrasting echo of her internal chaos. To silence the gnawing doubt, she opened her proposal document once more, scanning the words that now felt both familiar and daunting. A flood of determination raced through her veins. Today was pivotal. There would be no more retreating to the comfort of silence. She had already made the decision to rise. But how could she present her ideas with integrity when her palms were slick with the sweat of apprehension? She needed to embody the pathway she had forged through her past, blending personal with professional seamlessly. Drawing on her earlier conversation with Mr. Delaney, she scribbled a line that summed up her premise: understanding silence creates a blueprint for empathy. Suddenly, the room felt charged with a greater purpose. Each word she typed felt like a declaration of her right to be heard, to voice her experiences and aspirations. Her mind began constructing the narrative she wanted to present, how her lived experiences shaped her professional insights, yet, lurking beneath her resolve was a nagging question. Would her supervisors view her perspective as an asset or an inconvenience? Would they see her emotional journey as a valid component of her professional ethos? She flexed her fingers, reminding herself that the hardest journeys sometimes yield the most impactful transformations. The clock ticked toward her meeting, and with each passing minute, her confidence began to swell. She visualized herself in the meeting room, presenting her ideas with passion and clarity. Her heart raced with anticipation of the challenge, but as this vision took shape, so too did shadows of doubt. Mr. Delaney's struggles began to merge with her own insecurities. Was her voice important enough to resonate, or would it be drowned by the louder ones around her? As she closed her laptop and took a deep breath, a plan began to coalesce in her mind. An idea unspooled, a strategy to frame her proposal not just around herself but around the value of inclusion. If she could articulate how her insights linked to broader organizational benefits, perhaps they would see her not as a mere receptionist but as an integral part of their mission in advocacy. Gathering her notes, she practiced speaking aloud, her reflection a testing ground for how her words would land. Empathy drives innovation, she stated firmly, realizing that this was not merely her voice being channeled. It was a rallying cry for collaboration, a way to broaden the narrative that had so decidedly been confined to the box her office life had wrapped around her. But as she walked towards the meeting room, her pulse quickened and uncertainty tugged at her again. What if her supervisors dismissed her passion, interpreting it merely as emotional overflow devoid of analytical strength? What if they questioned her qualifications rather than seeing her unique insights as a valid contribution? Each step forward felt like a tightrope walk between fear and hope, but Sarah firmly grasped her folder with a steely resolve. She wouldn't be bowing to the specter of doubt today. Navigating the corridors that felt oddly foreign, she made a conscious decision to reflect on Mr. Delaney, soaking in the strength of their shared honesty, the way they had opened up about their vulnerabilities. As the door loomed ahead, decorated with the polished brass nameplate that dominated her fantasies, an image flashed in her mind. The reception desk was filled with colleagues laughing, conversations buzzing, yet Sarah remained resolute among them. For years, harboring her own truth. No longer, with one hand on the door handle, she hesitated, swallowed hard, and envisioned standing tall, purposefully presenting her case. But beneath that fire, a smaller voice whispered. What if confronting the biases within the meeting revealed more about herself than she was prepared to accept? Nobody had ever asked Sarah to blend the personal with the professional before. Would the act of putting her heart on the line give her the power she sought, or would it expose her vulnerability in a world that thrived on cold rationality? Time stretched, and for a moment, she considered retreating, fading back into the shadows that had become familiar. But the echo of her conversation with Mr. Delaney reinforced her resolve. He had shown her that vulnerability could be a strength. As she turned the handle and pushed the door open, a new thought coursed through her. Her moment was now, and the questions surrounding her identity might just be the catalyst to her ultimate transformation. Would she emerge triumphant, or would this choice lead to an unexpected confrontation, forcing her to reassess everything she thought she knew? The truth awaited her beyond that door. Inside the meeting room, a whirlwind of emotions exploded within Sarah. The sterile walls, which had once felt like a prison to her aspirations, now buzzed with potential as she crossed the threshold. Her supervisors were already seated, their expressions a blend of curiosity and professional detachment. With every step toward them, she reminded herself that she possessed not only a unique perspective but also a sense of urgency that demanded to be voiced. As she stood before them, the words she had meticulously crafted danced anxiously in her mind. This would not be an ordinary presentation, it was a narrative, hers woven into the fabric of the proposal. She noticed the familiar faces of her colleagues, their keen eyes assessing her readiness. The air tightened as she began, her voice quaking with both fear and vigor. Thank you for gathering today, she started, embracing the overwhelming weight of the moment. I would like to discuss the role of empathy in our organizational structure and how my personal experiences connect with this mission. The sincerity of her statement broke through the anxiety as she exhaled slowly, anchoring her confidence to the purpose behind her endeavor. As she outlined her thoughts, she articulated how empathy was not merely a soft skill but a transformational force that could drive innovation and enhance team collaboration. Her narrative unfolded, revealing her struggles with silence, a silence that mirrored her professional journey. The quietude had been suffocating, yet it had also become a profound teacher. Each word she spoke became an invitation for her audience to reconsider how they approached human connection in the workplace, yet, just as she began to feel the rhythmic flow of dialogue, a voice interjected: Sarah's manager, Ms. Collins. You have certainly made your case for empathy, but we must consider the bottom line. What concrete data do you have to support this? Sarah felt a jolt of panic. Here was the cold rationality she had feared. How could she translate her emotional insights into metrics? Her heart raced, and for a brief moment, the silence she once knew loomed ominously in her mind. However, amid that uncertainty, a spark ignited. Empathy fosters stronger relationships, Sarah asserted, quickly recalibrating. Studies show that organizations prioritizing emotional intelligence outperform their peers. By investing in our employees' emotional welfare, we not only enhance their productivity but also attract talent who value an inclusive workplace. As she spoke, she realized that this data, often overshadowed by hard metrics, was vital to her argument. The skepticism in the room began to ebb as her passion broke through the barrier of indifference. The more she spoke, the more she could see her words resonating, eliciting nods from her colleagues. They were no longer just hearing a proposal, they were witnessing a transformation. Hers and, perhaps, theirs. The energy shifted, a palpable understanding threading through the group. Ms. Collins leaned forward, her brow furrowed as she processed the implications. You believe that by embracing vulnerability, we can foster innovation? She probed, her challenge pushing Sarah toward the very edge of her introspection. Yes, Sarah replied, feeling the breakthrough solidify into a clearer vision. Embracing our vulnerabilities opens the door for profound connections on all levels. My experiences have shown me that the stories we carry can unite us, enhance our team dynamics, and ultimately yield a healthier work environment. A moment of silence followed. The executives exchanged glances, and Sarah held her breath, praying that her words had struck a chord. Suddenly, she felt an unexpected wave of clarity wash over her. The hesitation that lingered at her core began to dissolve. At that moment, she understood that her voice mattered, that her journey was not just her own, it was a collective acknowledgement of the paths they all walked. Let us explore ways to implement workshops on emotional intelligence, Ms. Collins finally proposed, her tone shifting toward one of agreement. Just then, Sarah's heart soared. She was not merely presenting her ideas but igniting a movement within the organization. This moment was an awakening, redefining her relationship with her workplace and herself. Yet, as relief flooded through her, another question bubbled up: what challenges would she face next, now that she had dared to transcend her boundaries? With those thoughts stirring in her mind, the meeting wrapped up, yet a new uncertainty began to emerge. How would she navigate the organizational outcomes of her proposal? Would her newfound confidence withstand potential backlash from colleagues who clung to the status quo? As Sarah walked out of the meeting, she knew she was at the precipice of a new chapter. The journey of her self-discovery was only just beginning, opening doors to challenges that lay ahead. Would she be prepared to confront them, or would her resolve be tested once again? The weeks that followed felt like a rapid ascent, each day marked by eager anticipation and newfound expectations. Sarah eagerly observed her colleagues responding to the implementation of workshops on emotional intelligence. Yet, as their active participation increased, a gnawing worry settled within her. The reality of change brought forth tension that she hadn't anticipated. Despite her initial victory, the shadows of doubt crept in. Would her colleagues fully embrace the vulnerability that empathy demanded, or would her attempts meet resistance? One afternoon, Sarah sat down with her mentor, Clara, a seasoned leader in the department, for a review of the proposed workshops. Clara had always been a guiding light, encouraging Sarah to harness her potential. But today, Clara's brow was knitted with concern as she watched Sarah present her plans. "You've made significant strides, Sarah, but this is going to be a much harder sell than anticipated," Clara said, her tone measured. Sarah paused, the gears in her mind churning. "What do you mean?" Clara leaned forward, her voice lowering. "Not everyone believes in empathy as a tool for productivity. Some think it dilutes the bottom line, and we have a few stakeholders who are particularly resistant to change." A cascade of anxiety washed over Sarah. She hadn't realized these sentiments ran deeper among her peers. Still, the thought of retreating was inconceivable. "I need to find a way to illuminate its benefits," she confirmed, her determination hardening. The struggle for acceptance would require more than enthusiasm, it called for strategy. That night, as she reflected on the meeting, an idea sparked. Sarah realized she could use both quantitative data and personal stories. By organizing a session that highlighted the successes of organizations that had prioritized emotional intelligence, she could weave compelling narratives alongside hard facts. Yet, amidst this inspiration, a voice within her whispered doubts. What if the statistics failed to persuade? What if the personal stories were dismissed as mere anecdotes? Several days later, Sarah gathered data, aligning it with real-life experiences from her own career, where empathy had transformed difficult situations. The blend laid a foundation for a possible approach during the first workshop. The night before, she rehearsed in front of her mirror, struggling to keep her voice steady as she practiced acknowledgement of potential backlash. Staring into her own eyes, she reminded herself of the underlying purpose, igniting a culture of connection and understanding. It was more than her individual triumph, it was about opening a door for her team, others who felt required to choke down their experiences to fit the mold. But was she ready to face the potential backlash? The day of the workshop arrived, swirling with anticipation. As Sarah spoke, she felt shivers of excitement and dread. She launched into her presentation, displaying concrete data that illustrated enhanced performance metrics in workplaces embracing empathy. Gradually she began to share her personal experiences of transformation, her own dark nights of self-doubt juxtaposed with moments of clarity and resolve. Yet as the details poured out, she caught sight of crossed arms and skeptical expressions. Reality struck. What if she lost their engagement? Her heart pounded as she faced the reality of their disinterest. A sudden thought bathed her in clarity. She stopped, adapting her approach mid-presentation. "Let's discuss," she encouraged, inviting dialogue. As she opened the floor, the room buzzed with hesitancy, then the true conversations began. Questions floated in the air, layered with criticism, but also genuine curiosity. The ensuing discussion was raw, probing deeper into why emotional intelligence felt threatening. As Sarah stood amidst the exchange, she recognized the undeniable growth. This was no longer solely her journey. It was the moment she could collectively guide the group, navigating through resistance and unease towards understanding. As the workshop concluded, she sensed an unspoken connection forming, yet lingering questions clouded her mind. Had she made enough of an impact, or were she risking igniting further dissent? The path ahead was nebulous, and just as she began to grasp her footing, she watched a few faces, those fierce guarders of tradition, whisper among themselves. With a flash of resolve igniting in her chest, she knew change was within reach, but the struggle would be relentless. As the day came to a close, she caught Clara's eye across the room. The moment lingered, heavy with the tension of uncharted territory. What awaited her were conversations that had yet to emerge, challenges spiraling into unexpected realms. As convoluted emotions danced within her, Sarah prepared to confront not only her colleagues but her fears. Would this be the moment she discovered her true capacity to influence change, or would she find herself defeated by the very skepticism she sought to dismantle? A week passed since Sarah's workshop, and the ripples of that day continued to echo within her. Every morning, she arrived at work with a heightened sense of vigilance. She scanned the faces of her colleagues as they filed into the office, searching for signs of engagement or indifference. Though a few conversations had sparked post-workshop, they were fleeting, often circling back to the comfort of routine. Doubts lingered like a fog, muffling her clarity. Clara approached her one afternoon, aware of the struggle that simmered beneath Sarah's surface. "You're still holding on to uncertainty, aren't you?" she asked, arching an eyebrow gently. Sarah hesitated, then nodded. "Yes. I feel the momentum is fragile. I need to understand how I can build on what has been started. Start by reaching out. You need to listen to those who were hesitant," Clara advised. "Engage the skeptics. Their opposition may reveal opportunities." Those words ignited a realization. She needed to discover the root of their resistance, not just for her sake, but for the team that was slowly beginning to warm to the idea of vulnerability. Determined to confront her fears, Sarah crafted a plan. She would set up one-on-one conversations with various colleagues to unearth their concerns. This step felt monumental. Would they openly share their thoughts, or would it lead to further defensive walls? The first conversation was with Mark, a senior analyst known for his analytical prowess but also his steadfast skepticism. In a small conference room, Sarah approached with a mixture of confidence and trepidation. "Hey, Mark. Can we chat for a moment?" "Sure," he replied, his tone unreadable. After small talk, Sarah leaned into the purpose of their meeting. "I wanted to hear your thoughts on the workshop." I sensed some hesitation in the room. Mark crossed his arms, a shield she recognized from the workshop. "Honestly? It felt like fluff. We're here to boost productivity, not share feelings." The bluntness pierced her. "What if I told you empathy and productivity aren't at odds? I've seen it work in other environments." "Maybe, but those are cherry-picked examples. What about here? Our teams need results, not empathy workshops." She inhaled deeply, the need to convince wrapping tightly around her. "I understand your point. But if people feel heard and valued, that often translates into higher performance." He remained stone-faced, unwilling to concede. She braced herself for defeat, yet something within her flickered a recognition. "Mark, can I ask? Have you ever experienced a work environment that prioritized emotional connection?" His expression softened slightly, but he shook his head. "Not really, no. I guess I just don't see how being empathetic would make my job easier." That simple admission ignited an ember of opportunity within Sarah. Their conversation shifted toward discussing instances where stress impacted their collective output, a human issue masked by data and deadlines. By the time they finished, an unexpected connection formed, built from shared experiences rather than mere defenses. As she moved on to her next colleague, Janet, Sarah reflected on how personal revelations laid a path forward. Unpacking layers of skepticism revealed similarities both in human longing and fears. If she strived to find common ground in these discussions, perhaps that would create a foundation for lasting change. Days turned into weeks filled with steady conversations, each peeling back layers of distrust and fostering dialogue. Yet, as the warmth radiated from her interactions, she also felt the looming shadow of those who continued to resist change. A pulse of anxiety gripped her as the quarterly performance meeting approached. Would the tensions simmering beneath the surface erupt? Had her efforts reached anyone, or would the collective pushback silence what she had aspired to create? The day of the meeting finally arrived, and as she entered the conference room, she felt the weight of her ambitions pressing against her. Would she stand firm against the skepticism, ready to engage her doubters? Once more, the time had come to confront the ramifications of her efforts. Would she find that one critical ally who could help change the narrative, or would she face the collective might of resistance head-on? As Sarah settled into her chair at the long, polished conference table, she felt an unsettling tide within her, a mix of anticipation and dread swirling just beneath the surface. Surrounding her were the faces of the leadership team, their expressions an uneasy blend of professionalism and unspoken skepticism. She coughed lightly to clear her throat, grappling with the knowledge that this meeting could either confirm her growth or lay waste to her ambitions. "Thank you all for coming," her manager, Andrew, began, his voice steady as he referred to the performance metrics from the last quarter. As you know, we promised results, and it's crucial we adhere to those expectations. An involuntary shiver ran down Sarah's spine as he glanced in her direction. She felt the weight of their collective gaze, some interested in her input, others poised to challenge any deviation from the status quo. Her heart pounded lightly against her ribs, a familiar rhythm of anxiety urging her to hesitate. Yet, the discussions she had over the past weeks filled her mind with clarity. Actually, she interjected, her voice steadier than she felt, I believe we should consider not just the numbers but also the context behind them. The engagement workshop aimed to increase collaboration, and I've noticed a difference in communication among teams. The room reacted. A mix of raised eyebrows and half-smirks signaled underlying doubt. She needed to reinforce the value of her insight, to leverage what she had learned from her conversations. Let me share a specific example, she continued, gathering her resolve. I spoke with several colleagues who voiced feeling unheard and undervalued. In my experience, when people feel connected, they're more likely to contribute positively, which ultimately influences our results. Mark's earlier skepticism flickered momentarily in his eyes as he leaned back in his chair. But does that directly translate to sales or production? That's a big leap, he shot back, almost eager to challenge her premises. Yes, it is a leap, she replied, her confidence bolstered by the need to validate her position. However, trust and open dialogue can foster innovation. It allows us to tap into potential that's often overlooked because we're too focused on deadlines. Think about the projects where collaboration breeds success. There was a tangible tension as she spoke. Her colleagues shifted, some exchanging glances while others remained expressionless. Sarah's pulse quickened. This was her moment to feel vulnerable and powerful simultaneously. Look, Andrew finally interjected, we all appreciate the initiative, but at the end of the day, we have to measure success in tangible metrics. We need to avoid distractions. Can you quantify how this will impact our targets? His words were like a brick wall, but in the depths of her anxiety, something shifted. She realized that this was not solely about defending her ideas, it was a call to incite change, a challenge to think differently in the face of rigid structures. Perhaps not yet, Sarah conceded, feeling a newly found determination surge within her. But if we don't invest now in these human elements, understanding motivation, recognition, empathy, we risk stagnation. We owe it to ourselves and the missions we're committed to. A silence enveloped the table, and for the first time, she observed a flicker of contemplation in Mark's eyes. Still, uncertainty reigned. She sensed the weight of the challenge lingering, but instead of buckling under it, she embraced it. This was a battle for her belief in better practices. As the meeting progressed, fragments of resistance began to shift as she reasserted her vision, supporting her ideas with examples, even laughter. Slowly, the tension transformed into a more engaged dialogue, allowing for diverse perspectives to clash and converge, but as Sarah left the conference room, shadows of doubt began to creep in again. Had she really moved the needle, or was she merely rolling a stone uphill? What if this was just a moment amidst a sea of continued resistance? And what if Mark's skepticism morphed into a defiant stance against her initiatives? With these questions gnawing at her, Sarah found herself standing once more at the crossroads of her personal development, a testament to her resilience. She needed a reckoning, a way to confront the deeper roots of her fear and clarify her path forward. In the days to come, she would have to decide, would she retreat in the face of opposition or press on, diving deeper into the emotional landscape of her colleagues for understanding and support? The stakes were far greater than mere numbers. She could either soar or sink in this precarious environment. Sarah's journey of self-discovery came to fruition the day she realized that her aspirations were no longer tethered to the past, nor dictated by the opinions of her peers. On the final day of the quarter, buoyed by a blend of anticipation and trepidation, Sarah entered the office ready to address her colleagues collectively, a pact forged in empathy, innovation, and vulnerability. The atmosphere pulsated with familiar tension as she surveyed the room, but this time, doubt had little room to linger. Each step toward the front exuded a newfound conviction. She recalled all the conversations, workshops, and moments of vulnerability that had shaped her growth. This was her moment to reclaim her narrative, to unveil her authentic self, a competent woman, not merely a receptionist but a leader with something valuable to contribute. Thank you all for gathering. Her voice cut through the murmurs, steady and clear. Today, I want to revisit our recent workshops and the ongoing conversations sparked across teams. We all felt challenges, whether in communication, workload, or collaboration. But I believe that what we unearthed is a path forward to a healthier work culture. The room was silent, the initial hesitations melting into curiosity. Sarah leaned into the discomfort, prepared to address the unvoiced concerns. I understand skepticism. Rest assured, healthy debate is essential, but I must ask, what if we embraced vulnerability as an inherent strength rather than a liability? A ripple of murmuring surged through the room. Mark shifted in his seat, arms now uncrossed, a small yet significant indication of his willingness to engage. I've spoken to many of you about what you need: more listening, recognition, and authentic connections. She steadied herself. Every story told and every conversation shared has confirmed this isn't just about feeling good, it's about optimizing potential. It's time to shift the narrative. As her dialogue unfolded, a palpable transformation was evident. Her colleagues leaned in, drawn by an unexpected vulnerability that resonated beyond mere analysis. With each story she shared, she exemplified how empathy and productivity are intricately linked, muddying the previously rigid lines drawn between emotion and efficacy. The discussion intensified. For the first time, she felt the collective weave of their experiences. Those who had once thought her ideas mere fluff now voiced their own experiences, enriching the discourse with authentic emotion. They grappled with their roles and fears, juxtaposed against a newfound understanding that engagement could lead to remarkable results, and then it happened. Mark stood, the transformation palpable in his stance. Sarah, you've made me reconsider. I didn't think emotions belonged in our workplace. But maybe it's time we create a culture where everyone is valued. If we can trust each other, it might just enhance our productivity. A wave of agreement rolled through the room, thunderous applause erupted. It wasn't merely acceptance, it was recognition of Sarah's vision, her courage, and the shared humanity they all embodied. They were confronting the shadows of doubt together, forging a new path under the light of collaborative transformation. In the weeks that followed, the fruits of their labor materialized as emotions harmonized with productivity. Sarah's leadership blossomed. She established regular meetings centered on emotional intelligence practices that sustained the momentum of their discussions and sought continuous improvements within their culture. Each week felt like a deliberate step toward building an inclusive workplace. Sarah found her voice asserting itself in meetings, not shying from challenges but instead embracing them head-on. She saw numbers rise not just in productivity but in employee satisfaction surveys, reflecting the newfound connection they had co-created. The acknowledgement came swiftly. In a quarterly review, Andrew praised her abundant contributions. Sarah has shown us that leadership comes in many forms. Her advocacy for empathy has helped. All of us challenge our pasts and grow as a team. The recognition felt surreal, yet deserved. Sarah smiled, standing confidently among her colleagues, proud of the bridge she had built, one that had transformed not only her professional landscape but her self-perception as a leader. As Sarah stepped into the new chapter of her career, she recognized that her journey had transcended the confines of her designation. She had conquered fears, dismantled barriers of silence, and achieved not only professional respect but personal fulfillment. She embodied the change she had sought, demonstrating that true strength lies in connection, and success is amplified when we journey together. Now resolute, Sarah regarded her aspirations not as distant dreams but solid realities she had crafted for herself. The time had come to remain vigilant, to continue advocating for empathy within the structures of their organization and beyond, into a community where every voice mattered. This was her legacy, one of authenticity, connection, and strength. It was just the beginning. To everyone who has joined us on this emotional journey, the moment to act is now. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that will inspire and transform. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help more people find these life-changing narratives. Comment below your reactions and theories about this ending. You never know who else might connect with your thoughts. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion and realize the power of vulnerability and connection. Let us build this community together.